I never imagined that what seemed like a crazy day would open a new chapter in my life, one full of lies and betrayal. We had always spent Thanksgiving at our house for the past 18 years, but this year was different. Both of our grown-up sons had left home to study at other schools. Isaac went to college in California, and Emily chose a university here in Georgia. Both of them were busy and had little time to come back home. We decided to visit my wife Elisa's family in North Georgia, a place where I never really felt comfortable. Elisa had always been someone who liked to keep things calm and rarely showed emotion. She had been with me since we were young, but gradually I started to feel the distance between us. Our life had changed as the kids grew up, and Elisa began spending more time with her family, especially with her mother and father. I didn't say anything, but I could feel the gap growing. My job was that of an insurance claims adjuster, a job I absolutely hated. Meanwhile, Elisa never worked outside of being a housewife. Everything seemed normal that day. We got in the car, and together with our son, Isaac, and daughter Emily, we headed to my wife's family home. The streets were quiet, the weather was cool, and I thought to myself that this might be the perfect opportunity for our family to gather, thinking nothing could disrupt the peaceful atmosphere. But I was wrong. When we arrived, Elisa and I, along with her parents, were preparing for dinner. Greg, my father-in-law, and I sat down, had some beer, and talked about football, while Elisa and Janet, her mom, busied themselves preparing the food. Everything was fine until Elisa stood up and said she was going out for a bit. "Do you want to come with me?" I asked, but she just shook her head. "No, I have something to do. I'm going to see Linda Walker, an old friend of mine I haven't seen in over 10 years. I nodded, but something about Elisa's response didn't sit right with me. It wasn't like her to go off alone, especially when we were all together. Still, I didn't press it. I thought maybe she just needed some time to herself. After all, she had always kept a low profile and wasn't one to share much about her feelings. I watched her walk out the door, her steps quick and determined. As soon as she left, I turned back to my father-in-law, Greg, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that was starting to grow inside me. We continued talking about football, but my mind kept wandering back to Elisa. About an hour passed, and she still hadn't returned. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine, but the longer she was gone, the more uncomfortable I felt. Finally, I excused myself and stepped outside to call her. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Are you coming back soon?" "Dinner's almost ready." There was a long pause before Elisa answered, her voice slightly off. "I'm not sure. I'll be a while longer. Don't wait for me." I frowned, confusion taking over. "Is everything okay? Why so long? You said you were just meeting Linda." She hesitated, then said, "I'll explain when I get back." That was it. I hung up, trying not to let my worry show. I went back inside, pretending like nothing was wrong, but my mind was racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that Elisa was hiding something from me. By the time dinner was served, Elisa still wasn't back. I tried to eat, but the food tasted bland in my mouth. I couldn't concentrate. My heart was beating faster with every minute that passed. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting Elisa to walk in, but she never did. Just as we were finishing the meal, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Elisa. I opened it quickly, hoping for some explanation, but the message was short and cryptic. "I'll be home soon." I stared at the message for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Don't ask questions. Please trust me. Trust me? My mind was spinning. What was Elisa doing out there? And why did she need me to trust her without explaining anything? It didn't feel right, and the more I thought about it, the more my gut told me something was off. I put my phone down and joined the rest of the family. But it was hard to focus on the conversation. Greg and Janet were talking about their plans for the holidays. Emily was on her phone, and Isaac was staring out the window, lost in his thoughts. I could feel the tension building inside me, but I tried to stay calm, not wanting to ruin the evening. But when she stepped out of the car, I could tell something was different. Her face was pale, her eyes avoiding mine. She didn't even look like the woman I had married. Without saying a word, she walked past me and into the house. I followed her, my heart racing. Inside, everyone else was still at the table, pretending like nothing had changed. But I knew something had. Elisa sat down quietly, not meeting anyone's gaze. I stood there for a moment, watching her, the silence in the room growing thicker. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Elisa," I said, my voice low but firm. "What's going on? Where were you? Who were you really meeting?" Her eyes met mine for the first time since she had returned, and I saw something in them: fear, guilt, maybe even shame. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. I could see her struggling to find the right thing to say. I didn't want to tell you yet," she finally whispered, "but I think it's time you knew." My heart pounded in my chest. What was she about to say? "There's someone else," Elisa confessed. "I've been seeing him for months." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I took a step back, my mind reeling, unable to process what she was saying. I couldn't breathe. The world around me seemed to blur, the room spinning as I tried to stay grounded. "I'm so sorry," she continued, her voice trembling. "I never meant for it to happen, but I've fallen in love with him, and I don't know how to fix this." I stood there, frozen. The silence between us felt like an eternity. The betrayal stung, a pain I had never imagined I would feel. My life, our life, everything I thought I knew, had just shattered in an instant. I couldn't move, couldn't even think clearly. Her words kept repeating in my mind, echoing over and over like a broken record. "I've been seeing him for months." I tried to swallow, but my throat felt dry tight. My eyes stung with a mix of anger, confusion, and hurt. "Who is he?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Elisa looked down at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. She was quiet for a long time, and I could see the struggle in her eyes. It was as if she was trying to find a way to explain this mess, but there was no way to make it sound better. There was no way to undo what had already been done. I didn't know how to tell you," she said, her voice cracking. "His name is Mark. I met him through a friend. At first, it was just talking, but then things happened. I don't know when it got so serious. I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but it wasn't working. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding in my chest. I had always trusted Elisa. We had been together for so long, through everything, and now this. "You've been hiding this from me for months?" I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "All the while, I've been here, thinking everything was fine, and you've been with him?" Elisa's face twisted with guilt, but I could see the sadness in her eyes too. She stood up slowly, her hands outstretched, as if trying to reach me. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mark. I never wanted to hurt this family, but I've been so lost in my own feelings. I didn't know what to do. I backed away, not wanting her close, not wanting to hear anymore. So, you just kept this secret from me. You just kept lying to my face every day. I'm sorry, Elisa whispered again, her voice barely audible. I shook my head, tears threatening to fall. I didn't want to cry in front of her, but it was hard to hold it all in. All the years we had spent together, all the moments I had trusted her. It was all slipping away, and I couldn't stop it. Why now? I asked, my voice cracking. Why tell me now? After everything? Elisa took a step forward, hesitated, and then whispered, I couldn't keep lying. I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. But I know I've already lost you. For the first time in years, I felt a surge of anger, not just at her, but at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not noticing the signs that something had changed in her. You've already lost me, Elisa, I said coldly, the words coming out sharper than I meant. You don't get to choose when this ends. It ended the moment you decided to lie to me, the moment you decided to go behind my back. The room was silent after that. Elisa stood there, her face pale, her eyes filled with regret. But there was nothing left for her to say, nothing that could take away the pain or the betrayal I was feeling. I turned away from her, needing space to breathe, needing distance to think. I couldn't look at her anymore. The woman I thought I knew was no longer standing in front of me. Instead, there was a stranger, someone who had broken the trust I had given her for all these years. I need time, I said, my voice firm but broken. I need to figure out what happens next. I didn't wait for a response. I left the room, walking out the door and into the night. The cold air hit me again, but it didn't feel like it was enough to clear the fog in my mind. I just kept walking, not sure where I was going or what I was supposed to do now. Everything had changed, and I didn't know if there was a way to fix it. I kept walking, not sure where my feet were taking me. The night was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world was holding its breath along with me. I needed to get away from the house, from Elisa, from everything that had just shattered in the span of a few minutes. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, anger, disbelief, sadness, and a deep, aching emptiness. I didn't know how to make sense of any of it. I walked for what felt like hours, my mind never quieting. I thought about the years Elisa and I had spent together, the good times, the moments when everything felt perfect. How had it all gone so wrong? How had I missed the signs? Eventually, I found myself sitting on a park bench, staring out into the dark, empty streets. The cold air nipped at my skin, but I didn't feel it. It was like everything around me had gone numb, including my heart. I didn't know how long I sat there. It felt like time had stopped, but eventually my phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my daze. It was a message from Emily. Dad, where are you? Are you okay? I stared at the screen for a long time before I responded. I'm fine. I just need some time alone. I sat there for a while longer, trying to process everything. I couldn't go back to the house yet. I didn't know if I could face Elisa or anyone else after what had just happened. The next few hours passed slowly. I ended up driving around, aimlessly, trying to think through everything, but my thoughts just kept circling. What should I do? Should I try to fix things with Elisa? Could I even forgive her? I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were, but what if I couldn't let go either? Eventually, I found myself sitting at a small diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. I wasn't sure why I'd ended up there, but it felt like the only place I could be. I wasn't ready to face the world just yet. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Elisa. I stared at the screen, my hand hovering over the decline button. I didn't want to talk to her right now. I wasn't ready for more excuses, more apologies that wouldn't change anything. But as the phone kept ringing, something inside me broke. I answered. "Eliza," I said, my voice tight, trying not to break down. "Mark," she replied, her voice trembling. "Please, let me explain. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know how to make it right. I'm sorry for everything." I took a deep breath. "You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay, Elisa. It's not that simple." "I know," she whispered. "I know I've ruined everything. But please, please don't leave me. I want to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." Her words hit me hard, but I couldn't let myself be swayed by them. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said. "But I just want a chance to show you that I'm sorry. Please just give me a chance." I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was feeling. Did I want to try to make it work? Could I live with this betrayal? I didn't know. "I need time, Eliza," I said finally, my voice soft but firm. "I need time to think about everything. And you need to understand that things might never be the same again. I don't know what the future holds." "I understand," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "Just please know that I love you. I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I said, but the words felt hollow. "I'll talk to you later." I hung up, feeling more lost than ever. The weight of the situation was unbearable, and I didn't know where to go from here. All I could do was sit in that diner, waiting for some kind of clarity to come, even though deep down I knew that everything had already changed. And I didn't know if I could ever find my way back. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions waking up, eating, working, but everything felt like I was living someone else's life. My mind kept going back to that moment, that phone call, and Elisa's confession. I kept hearing her words in my head, over and over. "I never meant to hurt you." But the hurt was there, deep and raw, and I didn't know how to move past it. I didn't go back to Elisa right away. She respected my need for space, but the silence between us felt heavier with each passing day. The kids, too, were quiet, and I could tell they knew something was wrong. They didn't ask about it directly, but I could see the concern in their eyes. Elisa was sitting in the living room when I walked in. She stood up immediately, her eyes filled with hope, but also fear. "Mark," she said softly, stepping toward me, "I'm glad you're home." I didn't know what to say. I stood there for a moment, just looking at her. It felt like everything had changed, and yet here we were, standing in the same house we had shared for so many years. But it didn't feel the same. "I don't know where to begin," I said, my voice heavy. "I don't know what to feel. You've completely turned my world upside down, Elisa." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know. And I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you, but I did. And now I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know if I can." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Elisa. I don't even know if I can stay. The trust we had, it's gone. And that's the hardest part of all this. I don't know how to rebuild that." She stepped closer, reaching out for my hand, but I pulled back, not ready for any kind of closeness. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now," she said quietly. "I just need you to know how much I regret what I did, how much I love you, and that I want to make things right, if you'll let me." I shook my head, trying to process everything. "You want me to let you fix this? How? How do we go back from this, Elisa? How do we go back to what we were before?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice small. "But I'm willing to try. I'll do anything to prove to you that I'm sorry. I want to rebuild this. I want to rebuild us." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just the exhaustion of the emotional weight. I didn't know. "I need time," I said, my voice quieter now, but still firm. "I don't know what the future holds for us, but I need space to figure out if I can trust you again. And I need time to decide if I even want to try." Elisa's face fell, but she nodded. "I understand. I'll give you the time you need. Just know that I'm here, and I'll be waiting for you to decide what you want." I turned away, walking toward the stairs. My heart was heavy, and my mind was still spinning. I didn't know if there was a way back. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her for what she had done. But part of me also wasn't ready to give up on everything just yet. As I walked up the stairs, I paused at the top, looking down at the empty hallway. I had no answers, no clear direction. But one thing was certain: everything had changed. And now, it was up to me to decide whether I was strong enough to try and rebuild, or if it was time to let go. For now, though, all I could do was take it one day at a time. Weeks turned into months, and the weight of everything didn't get any lighter. I tried. Really did. I gave Elisa the space she asked for, took time to think about whether there was any chance of healing. We talked a few more times, but every conversation seemed to circle back to the same painful place. The trust was broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. Elisa did everything she could to prove she was sorry, but the damage was done. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the image of her standing in front of me, confessing to the affair. That moment kept replaying in my mind, over and over. The person I had shared my life with, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had betrayed me. We tried couples therapy, but I didn't seem to make a difference. Each session only opened more wounds. I wasn't sure how to heal. I was torn between wanting to fight for our marriage and realizing that maybe it wasn't worth fighting for anymore. Then one evening, I came home to find Elisa sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of her. Her eyes were tired, but there was a quiet resolve in her face. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady, though I could see the tremble in her hands. I sat down across from her, my heart already heavy, knowing where this was going. "I think we both know that things aren't the same," Elisa said, her voice soft. "I've tried, and I know you've tried. But the truth is, I don't think we can come back from this. The trust. It's just not there anymore, and I don't think either of us is happy. I swallowed hard. I had been avoiding this conversation, but hearing the words out loud hit me like a punch to the gut. You want a divorce, don't you? She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I do. It's not what I want, but it's what I think is best for both of us. I don't want you to resent me anymore. I don't want to keep holding on to something that's broken. I sat there, the words sinking in, and I realized she was right. It was over. We had reached a point where there was no going back. I didn't want to keep fighting for something that was slipping through my fingers. I think you're right, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, and I don't think I can live like this anymore. Maybe it's time for both of us to move on. We sat there in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the decision hanging between us. There were no more words left to say. We both knew what was happening, what had to happen. I'll sign the papers, I said quietly, my heart aching. I just want this to be over. Eliza nodded, her face streaked with tears. I'm so sorry, Mark. For everything. I know, I said, my own tears threatening to fall, but I held them back. I'm sorry too. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was a quiet, painful process. We split everything down the middle, our years together reduced to a few legal papers. The house, the memories, the life we had built it all felt like it was being erased, bit by bit. After the divorce was final, I moved into a small apartment. The kids tried to keep things normal, but I could see the sadness in their eyes. They didn't fully understand what had happened, but they knew their family was no longer the same. Eliza and I rarely spoke after the divorce, though I did check in on the kids, especially Emily. I hoped they would be okay, that somehow we could all move forward. But in the end, I knew it was over. We had loved each other, but love alone wasn't enough. Sometimes, the damage is just too deep to repair. And that's how my story with Eliza ended quietly, painfully, with no dramatic closure, just the slow realization that we had both lost too much to keep going. The pain didn't go away right away, but with time, I started to find pieces of myself again. It wasn't easy, and there were days I didn't think I could move on. But slowly, I began to heal. Some chapters end with a bang, with a dramatic twist. But for me, this one ended quietly, just the sound of a door closing softly, leaving behind nothing but memories.